Hey, how's everybody doing? Hope you're having a fantastic day. So, I'm doing a book review right now. I usually don't do book reviews, but I would say about a year ago, I found out that Dr. Marshner, that he was in the process of translating Thomas Cajetan's, or Cajetanus, as I usually refer to him as, translating his commentary on the Summa. And a few months ago, CUA Press announced that it was coming at such and such a date, and they put on pre-order, and a lot of people pre-ordered the volumes, and they kept pushing it back and back and back and back. And of course, as everybody knows, I love Cajetan. I love the commentatorial tradition. So I was eagerly waiting this English translation because have read Cajetan before in Latin, and I quite like Cajetan's commentary. It gets to the point. It doesn't bring in superfluous material. Actually, I liked his introduction. I had read a lot of commentary on question one, obviously to get a feel before I reviewed it, because this is an area that I've studied a lot, both throughout St. Thomas's works and also throughout various commentators, and even have read into sentences prologues from Scotus, for example, because I really like this issue of the nature of theology. I think it's important for everybody to research into. But I think I lost my point. Where was I going with this? Oh yeah, so I had read all of this in preparation because I was so excited it finally came out, and I wanted to review this piece. And from the title of this video, the review that I did not want to do, I'm sure you can understand. And I really didn't want to do this because they had sent me review copies, all three. They're amazing structurally. I like this kind of structure, especially for something this big. You want them to be meaty. You want them to be meaty and big like this. You don't want lame little volumes, and it helps with cost and everything like that as well for the person purchasing. But it finally came out. I got my review copies, and yeah, I was a bit disappointed. And I want to be clear to distinguish between what is something which is subjectively problematic for me, and then something that would be somehow universally problematic for each individual who may come across it. So we can see clearly if you read the introduction, and I did read the introduction, you read the, I think it's translator's introduction, it's called. You read the back as well, and you read some of the intention behind this work. The intention behind this work wasn't for people like me or people like the general sphere of individuals who will watch the show or who interact with me on a daily basis when it comes to theology. This work is clearly for analytics, analytic philosophers. That's clearly what this work is meant for. You can see it through the manner in which he translates things, which we'll get into a bit more later. That's what it's for. And I mean, that's not my thing. So there's certain instances of texts where actually, due to this fact, I literally just had to go and pulled up the Latin text and just read the Latin text. And the Latin text was much clearer for me than my own mother tongue. So that's a big difficulty, I think. And on the other hand, some of the translation choices are interesting because for those who know, there's kind of two. Well, for those who don't know, I guess because I'm explaining it, there's kind of two manners in which somebody can translate things. It's really a sliding scale. At one end of the scale, you may have a extremely wooden, almost interlinear translation that basically, keeps rigidly to the structure and terminology as much as possible. Those, if you push it to one end too far, those are just unhelpful, and you might as well not even translate it at that point. It's impossible to read. At the other end, you can have basically a paraphrase type translation. It's trying to communicate the thoughts in a very, very loose contemporary way. And as a translator, what's difficult is you need to strike the balance between the two. And it's especially difficult when it comes to translators of scholastic theology. You kind of have to weigh this balance of wanting to think about whether you want to anglicize or communicate in English Latin terminology, or you want to basically communicate with an English word, the Latin term, just barely, or you want to actually just keep the Latin term itself in the text to signify that it's a technical term to the reader. And this is a huge balancing game for any translator. For example, I see right here in the text, per se is kept, or per accidents. That's an example of just keeping to a Latin term. But then there's other examples like being, that's trying to communicate something in English. And then there's others that I can see in here, knowables by explanation, for example. That's completely just a different term being put into the English language, trying to come up with an English technical term for a Latin technical term. So with this translation, it kind of goes through, as I just saw from this one page, I can see all three, goes through a mixture of them in a way that caters not to scholastics as much, although they would identify themselves as scholastics, but from our way of speaking, not as scholastics as much, but for the analytics. So there's that on the one hand, but on the other hand, as another comment about sort of the translation itself, it's very I don't know how to put it. It's very strange. I don't know if strange is the best word, but very I don't want to say unprofessional, because that would make it seem like it was lacking in quality, but it's very loose. Okay, I'll just give you examples. You'll get it. So I'll give you an example. So when, for example, if I were to translate something like regarding the first point, it would say as to job one. Or like when he talks about counter arguments, he calls them punches, and responding to a counterpart, blocking the punch. Just very interesting. And there's a bunch of different examples that I could probably pull up. I was sending some of these to people earlier. The practice of figuring things out from the Articles of Faith. There'd be that. Let me see. Calling, here we go. Calling science expertise. And like on a related matter, we say that a subordinate expertise, insofar as it is not connected to its higher expertise, so that would be a subalternate, and then subalternating, is not a cognitive attainment. So this would by attainment we usually use virtue, but a beginning of a cognitive attainment, which we usually would say cognitive virtue. And so it is at least oriented towards the kind of virtue, which is weird because the other two uses of virtue, he didn't use virtue, towards the kind of virtue that scientia is. And for some reason, in the first two, he said expertise, and the last one, he said scientia. So it's, this is what I mean about the translation. It's not consistent in the way that I would like. And also, I much prefer just technical terms, just keep them in Latin and have people get used to these technical terms, and use the English language as some sort of setting for Latin technical terms. I like that way of translating. Matthew Minard, for example, he does translation like that. I love Matthew Minard's translations. I really, really do love them. But with this, I just really don't like it. And I wanted to make sure it wasn't just me, because I'm not the best Latinist in the world, obviously, not the best Latinist. But I asked friends who are much better Latinists than I am, and they kind of agreed that, yeah, this is weird. And it got to certain points, I think I mentioned earlier, it got to certain points where I would be reading the text, and I would be lost. I just wouldn't understand what the heck this is saying. And I would have to, go into the Latin text and see which terms are being used. Like, for example, this one, I actually had a bit of confusion on what the heck higher expertise, what the heck higher expertise is supposed to mean, or cognitive attainment, what that's supposed to mean. And I went to Latin text and saw that by expertise he's meaning science, by attainment he's meaning virtue. It just made sense to me then. I'm like, oh, okay, yeah, this is really easy to understand. But the way that he translates it in order to try to appease a sort of way of speaking that is common to the audience that he's intending, which might be fine under that aspect, and that's his goal in this translation. To me, it just doesn't work for the type of translation or the type of audience that I'm intending to speak to, which is why I'm doing this video. So yeah, those are kind of the points on translation. But on the other hand, as I said, I really like the format and his footnotes. This is something that is a huge positive that I really liked. Are the footnotes, very extensive footnotes, in some ways, very extensive footnotes that he puts down in the bottom, sometimes explaining his translation choices, but also sometimes just explaining technical terms that are being used, and then also explaining the general argument sometimes. Those absolutely fantastic, worth the price of the book, for sure. But I just really can't get over the translation style. And from the friends of mine who are also fans of Cajetan, they basically said the same thing about the translation style. They just can't get over it. It's just a huge difficulty. But for the footnotes, I'll say absolutely amazing. So yeah, I guess that's all that I have to say about this. See, I guess that wasn't as bad as I thought it was going to be when it came to this review. I was, because you kind of feel bad. Somebody sends you, a review copy for completely free in order to review it. You'd hate to just go in and just trash, the work and say everything bad about it. But from my perspective, at least from my type of audience, the type of translation that I like, I just don't like it. But I see where they're coming at in their intention to translate this for a wider analytic audience. So I guess that's all that I have to say. I will place an affiliate link of mine in the link below if you do want to check it out. And then also, if you become a patron, you can join the Discord. We've been talking about it kind of all morning if you wanted to get into the conversation about that. So as always, thank you and God bless.